Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the No Woman Left Behind podcast show. I'm Rosie Zilinskas, your podcast host. Today we continue the conversation on our negotiating series. We're talking about how to negotiate in the corporate world, and this is episode 6 of 8. Before I tell you about our guest today, I do want to remind you that I have some gifts on my website. First, there is the Corporate Kickstart quiz. It'll tell you, it's about a 10-minute quiz, and it'll give you a little bit of insight on where you are in your career. I have the Corporate Kickstart course. It's a free course, and it'll get your creative juices going on what you need to do to create a plan for your career. And finally, if you are in the process of wanting to have a conversation, you can also book the Corporate Kickstart consultation with me. You will be able to find all this information on my website, and the website is nowomanleftbehind.com. Today, I am talking to Kimberly Spencer. Kimberly Spencer is an award-winning high-performance, trauma-informed coach and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Crown Yourself. She is helping visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out fearlessly, and make the income and the impact they deserve. Kimberly is proof that it's better to make your own mold than to conform to someone else's. Her work has been featured on Netflix, the CW, ESPN, Chicken Soup for the Soul, NPR, Thrive Global, CNBC, and Forbes. So obviously, she has a tremendous amount of accomplishments. We're going to talk about what holds women back from negotiating. She's going to provide us with an interesting study on female lawyers and when they do charge billable and non-billable hours. And then overall, we're just going to talk about having those courageous conversations, why we get stuck in our heads. So again, this is going to be a great conversation. And, the reason why I'm doing all of these negotiating episodes is because I want you to bring to you different perspectives on negotiating. I think it's so important that you have those different perspectives. So with that, stay tuned for my conversation with Kimberly Spencer. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here on the No Woman Left Behind podcast show. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm going to start right away. I know that in your language as a high performance coach, you use a very specific word, which is visionary instead of leader. Why do you start with that language with your clients?
So I use the word visionary instead of leader. And first of all, before I dive in, I just have to say thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm so honored, so excited to dive in. And why I use the word visionary instead of leader is because when we started doing the market research for all the marketing and over the 6 years that I've had my business, I've looked at language very specifically. I'm a neuro-linguistic programming coach. Language, like I'm a writer by trade. Like that is my juicy bit. The thing that I get like so revved up for is language. And I was wondering, like any good marketer, what does the language that my client use, not me, because I would use the word leader. Like my name, Kimberly, actually means leader. But I looked at my language of my clients and they weren't using the word leader. They may use business owner, but leader, they didn't use that. And I work with 90% women and they were not using the word leader, but they did resonate and use the word vision a lot. They used to have, they would say, oh, I have a vision for a better future, a vision for my job. Mm-hmm. And as I've gone through my own personal development work and developing myself as a leader, and then realizing the role of a visionary of a company, which typically isn't the role that women are playing when they first start a business, because you're playing like every role and then some. You're the marketer, you're the financier, you're doing sales, you're doing marketing, you're doing bookkeeping, like you're doing all the roles. But really, ultimately, the reason why most entrepreneurs get into business is because they have a vision for a greater future. And the faster they can move into that visionary role in their company, the faster their business is going to grow.
That is so insightful. And I know you're an NLP coach, and I know that language has to do with, how people react. So it is so interesting, though, that women don't see themselves as leaders, but they do see themselves as visionaries. I think that's such a key distinction, because I think it's scary. Sometimes it's scary for women to say, oh, yes, I'm a leader, to kind of acknowledge that. And along with that, so today we're going to be focusing more on negotiation.
I think claiming anything is pretty scary.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I mean, claiming your role in anything of saying, and owning it. And that's why our company core value is really ownership, which is a key piece in negotiation.
Yes.
Because that when you claim your role as a leader, when you claim, your vision for wanting to be able to travel the world. Like right now, I don't normally have a pirate in my background. I'm at Legoland with my family. But that was part of my vision, and I claim it. And some women may feel insecure or unsure or feel like they have to justify the vision that they've had for their life. And especially when leading into a negotiation conversation.
Absolutely. And so now that we're talking about the negotiating, and of course, we're doing a series on negotiating, and I love having different women like yourself talking about negotiating, because I want women in the corporate world to see that there's different ways to negotiate. And I know you, with all of your clients and all your background, we'll talk about your background in a little while, but what's one of the main things that you think holds women back in negotiating? I know I read a statistic that 20% of women never negotiate. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so sad. It's like, it's so sad. And yet I'm not surprised, because women are to negotiate from a place of power requires you to be in a place of power. Yeah. Being in a subservience or a state of people pleasing, that isn't going to serve you well. And from negotiating your price or negotiating your next pay raise with your boss, but typically to negotiate from a place of power, you have to understand what you're bringing to the table. And if you don't fully, and not just understand, but like know and embody what you're bringing to the table. And I'm not a big fan, because especially in entrepreneurship, especially in service-based industries, especially in the coaching world, there's the saying, charge what you're worth. And I'm like, no, I'm not a prostitute. I am priceless. Like, you don't charge what you're worth, because you're priceless, babe. Like you can't put a dollar amount on a person, but you can put a dollar amount to a process. And so if you have in your company or in your business provided a certain process or system that has produced results, that is what you argue for. That is what you negotiate for. When you can show the system and the strategy that you put into place, that is where you actually remove your identification. Because if we wrap up our identity that has all of its insecurities and doubts and imposter syndromes, and I still get it too, into what it is that we're selling, whether it's like the sale is our products and services, or the sale is for a pay raise. And I use the word sell because a selling is a negotiation conversation.
Sure.
When you're in that conversation, if you sell you and you're wrapped up in all your insecurities and all your self-doubts, the sale isn't going to go well.
Right.
But if you're in a conversation of persuasion, a sales conversation, and you're selling the process, the system, the results, the outcomes, that's how you can separate the identity of you. And we can work on the identity piece and like doing some personal development, maybe doing some therapy, doing some trauma healing. but sell the process, negotiate for the process, the system, the results, and the strategies that you've provided.
Absolutely. And so I know that you have, I know we talked a little bit about courageous conversations. And so one of the things that women, whether they're in business or the corporate world, like you said, if they don't believe that they are capable of getting that pay raise or that deal or whatever, it's probably not going to happen. So that kind of goes along with having courage within yourself, believing yourself, but then taking action. And that taking action is having that courageous conversation with whomever you're going to have it, your boss or another entrepreneur. So what are some of the things that you recommend to your clients when they're ready, when they kind of believe that they're ready to have that conversation? What are some steps that maybe you, or processes that maybe you use with your clients to have those conversations?
I love that question, Rosie. Thank you. I think the biggest thing that I lead with is that candor is kind. Like, and I use the example when I first started dating my husband. He is 19 years older than me. He wasn't sure with he had been previously married. In his former marriage, they hadn't wanted children. And I said, with me, kids are a non-negotiable. And if you want to have, like, you got to have children. If you want to, like, you got to want to have children if you're going to be with me.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, with you, I could see having children. And so now we're here at Legoland with our two beautiful children. But beyond that, it was because I had respect for him and I had respect for myself, that I didn't want to waste 2-3 years trying to convince him, trying to, implicitly imply that I want this thing, rather than coming right out and saying, this is what I want. And one of the hardest things that people struggle with, people in general and women specifically, is really claiming what it is that you want.
Yeah.
Like, I was working with one of my clients who was in a corporate position, and she liked her job, but she hated her boss. Her boss was super toxic. She really struggled in that relationship, never got a raise, struggled to get get permission to go to a doctor's appointment, like really challenged, like she had some challenges there. And it wasn't until she started being really candid with what it was she wanted, and like not just for her, but for the duration of her life, that she was able to manifest people coming into her world that could provide solutions, provide a referral, provide instead of a promotion, a crossing over to another department.
Okay.
And she ended up getting a promotion and a pay raise. But it wasn't until she started claiming like what it was that she wanted, like truly wanted. And I see that so much with people with women in business. I mean, we in business, sometimes we think we want what we think we want because we're told that, oh, when you start a business, you have to want a multi-million-dollar business. And not everybody does. Like, one of my very good friends who was a guest on my podcast, The Princess and the Bee, Emma Vega Malta, she was very clear. She's like, after she went through some health things, she's like, I did not want to have a multi-million-dollar business. I just wanted a nice, sustainable 6-figure business.
Right.
Great. But when you're clear on what you want, that's when you can actually go for what it is that you want. So you have to be candid with yourself about, like, is this something that I truly deeply want? And is this something that I truly am I'm not going to say ready for, because so many people wait until they're ready to start something. They wait until they're ready to negotiate. You're never ready, babe. You just do it.
Right.
But are you personally developed and personally responsible enough to handle the next level of responsibility? That is a question we do need to have answered in the case of what we want. With people in your followership who follow you on the socials saying something nasty or mean or taking your words out of context, it's going to come with with being able to have to implement team and surrender some control. So do you really want to handle the responsibility of having team rely on you for their paycheck, having getting some rejection here and there from some people not understanding what you're communicating, getting customers returning your services? Like, that's a huge piece to be able to understand. Are you personally developed enough to handle the rejection and the responsibilities of the negative that will come with it? Not that they may. So the same is true in a relationship. Like the reason I used my example with my husband is like in that relationship, and would I be able to handle the responsibilities that come with being committed to my husband, like that come with being in a committed relationship, that come with then having children. Like that's a big commitment. So you got to be all in to have like, would I be ready for those responsibilities? And my gut said, yes, I am. Not like I wasn't at the moment, like I was 24 at the time, but I knew that in time I would be ready in the situation of that committed relationship. So understanding like where you are personal development wise, where with your level of personal responsibility. If you're going for that raise, are you willing to handle it? Doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have more hours and more work, but you may have a different kind of work, a work that requires you to delegate more to an assistant to maybe do your scheduling or your booking or respond to some emails or train your sales assistant or train some, like it may require you to put in a different kind of work. Are you ready to put in that level of new responsibility? So candor is kind, and take personal responsibility of where it is that you want to go and the responsibilities that are going to come with that. And a great way to do that is to start talking to the people who are already doing that job and ask them, what are their responsibilities? What new responsibilities surprised them when they first started going in that position or starting that business? What were those responsibilities that they had that they didn't expect to take on, so that you can be prepared of like, is this something that I'm willing to take on with getting what I want?
Wow, you said a lot of great information there. Now, I kind of want to go back to being prepared for what's going to be, right? And so let's just take a step back. And if someone is in the process of going to negotiate something, whether again it's a raise or a promotion, like you said, you have to be ready emotionally, I think. And we actually had a different episode on just emotions and how you need to be ready. And you also need to be ready for the word no, like you said, the rejection. Because if they say no, no, you're not ready for the promotion, no, you're not ready for the raise, or no, not at this time, what are you going to come back with? What is the rebuttal or the question? Okay, well, can you explain to me why you think I'm not ready? Okay, is it no, never, no forever, or is it just no right now? And can we revisit the conversation? So, do you do some of those follow-up questions with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with any negotiation conversation, going in prepared is essential. So, first, a negotiation conversation is not about you. And there's a high performance framework that is combining acknowledgement, ambition, not yours, theirs, and being able to have that framework of their acknowledgement of their ambition and the affect of what you're bringing to the situation, to the conversation. What is your affect? What is your emotions that you're bringing? What is the state that you are in order to affect change? And then what is their ambition that they want to have? So when I get on a call for a sales call, I am very clear on what it is that they value, what it is that this person values, what is it that they want to achieve, what have they done so far that hasn't worked, and what are they working on doing that is working. So I acknowledge both, like what hasn't worked, and say, that's why having a coach is great to have in your back pocket, because you can test and run through things a lot faster. So I acknowledge those pieces of what hasn't worked. I look at what is their ambition? What is it they actually want to achieve? And am I the one to do it? Like I truly ask myself, am I the one to take them to that level of ambition? Because especially in a sales conversation, and especially with coaching or consulting, you have to believe in your customer that they are able to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. Like if you don't 100% believe like the sun is going to rise tomorrow, that they can achieve whatever it is that they say that they want, refer them to somebody else. You if you strike some good deals with some other fellow coaches or people in your industry, you can get maybe a referral commission from that, but refer them, like do them that favor. And secondly, if you're looking at negotiation, you want to look, and you're looking at the acknowledgement, you're looking at the ambition, and you're looking at the affect of like what it is that you're bringing to the table. energetically. So your state, if you're going in meekly in a disempowered state, rolling your shoulders forward, and your physiology is a huge piece of this. So roll your shoulders back, engage. There you have a little muscle in your shoulder blade called your rhomboids. Pull when you engage those, it actually sends signals to your brain that you have more confidence.
Yes.
Like, I wish I'd known that when I was 16. Like, when you roll your shoulders back, your chin is up, your body language and your posture, 55% of communication is physiological. So your energy, your biology needs to be in an energized state. And when you and being prepared to receive the no's or the reasons whys, or having to validate or justify what it is that you talk about. So like in a sales negotiation, you're going to want to have some price juxtaposition. You're going to want to understand why your cost is what it is, what other people's costs are. Because sure, everyone can get something cheaper.
Right.
Like that's why Walmart exists.
Right.
Like everyone can get something cheaper. The question is like what it is that they value and how can you tie how you serve in your specific way to what they value. And when you combine that framework of what acknowledgement can you give them, both of what they've done and of what they want to do, so their ambition, and of what they haven't yet been able to do and how you can fit into that space. And then their ambition, how do you fit into their ambition? How can you help them achieve their ambition faster or better or improve it? And then the affect, really looking at that affect of what energy are you bringing to the table? How are you carrying yourself physiologically?
Got it. Okay. So now I know that we talked about the fact that you pretty much coach 90% women, but you do have a few good men that you coach as well. And I know
great men. I love my men. Yeah. I love the men that I can work with. They're amazing.
Absolutely. And I know we talked a little bit about a study that you referred to with female and male lawyers. Can you tell us about that study?
So the study was that with female lawyers, they charge for the build time in front of their computer working on the case. So meaning like you have your papers in front of you, you have your computer open, you're going through, you're working on the case. Men will charge for their time thinking about it in the shower. They'll charge for their time sitting on the toilet thinking about it. Like they will bill more hours because they're charging for their brain space and that energy. And we as women have this perception that when you work with and this is not just in the legal realm, I've seen this across industries because I coach people from all over. And more often than not, it is women that have the lower prices. It is women that don't decide, because it's a choice. Decide that your thinking time is actually valuable. Like the time, if you're working with a client, and this was how I started substantially raising my prices for one-on-one private coaching, was when I'm working with a client, they come to me in like a meditation. And then I'm like, oh, I need to connect that client with this person, or I need to connect, this client with, this is a strategy I need to send them. And it'll just come to me. And that's because they're personally in my awareness and in my scope of environment, like consistently, and I'm seeing them week after week after week. So they're constantly in front of me. And because of that, there's a relationship that happens, just like a lawyer with a case they've got a case. It's constantly on their mind. It's coming up. They're coming up with ideas in the shower. I mean, I get some of my best ideas in the shower, and I'm not even a lawyer, but I know many people who do. And that time is valuable. And so wherever you are in your career, the time and energy that you're putting into that which you are investing your time and energy into, are you charging appropriately?
Yeah. And so I think that kind of translates when you're trying to get a salary raise. Say you're in the same position, not necessarily looking for a promotion, but you're doing great work and you have a salary that you have in mind. A lot of that has to do with you knowing what you want. So you need to go do your research, go on salary.com, go on, ladders, go on, upscale, those different websites so that you can do a little bit of research on what is the market paying. And then you're going to have to marry your own skills, your own achievements, and then come up with I call it kind of like the Goldilocks ask, kind of like pie in the sky, what you would be really happy with, and then what is not acceptable. So do you have some kind of equivalent to that?
I do. Yeah. I say you either get what you want, you get what you need, or you get what you settle for. So I do a lot of cross pollination of different areas of life, because sometimes we may not fully grasp something in business, but we may grasp it in our relationships. So let's take, for example, like a romantic relationship. If you have a list of 50 things that you desire in your ideal partner, and you're like, this person is like, they sing music, we have quality time on the couch, we go for trips and travel, but then you settle for them, you start dating someone who just, they have food in their fridge, and they have a steady paycheck, and they have a good pension plan. Like, they've got 3 out of the 50 covered. And I share this because I did that. So so when you're in that situation, you can either have what you want, you can have what you need, or you can have what you settle for. And you will always, bar none, get what you settle for. So if you settle for anything less than that what you want, you are literally teaching God, source, universe, collective consciousness, whatever that thing out there is. I personally believe in God, but you are declaring to the universe, this is what I actually want. And the universe responds accordingly. And that's where manifestation, and it can get a little woo-woo, but that's where we see that exact. I've seen it transpire over 6 years of coaching, having coached leaders consistently for 6 years, that you either get what you want, you get what you need, or you get what you settle for. And so if you're clear on, like, what is the bare minimum of what you want, if you're going in for a salary negotiation and you accept, like, you want to get a $30,000 raise, but you would accept 5,000, you get the raise. And typically what I found with most of my clients, when they do that, they get the raise and they get heaps of extra work and because they settled, they get resentful. And resentment, it does not do anything pretty for your relationship in your business. It can lead to you doing shoddy work because you're just like, you either don't care or you get apathetic, and it transpires into all of your relationships because you take that resentment with you. You take it home to your kids, to your family. Like, it's not a pretty thing. So when you go in for a negotiation, know what your I call it your bare ass minimum. And for not what you settle for, but for what you want. So mine is, like, when I go into a sales conversation with clients, like, I know my price point, and my bare ass minimum is that my client actually shows up and does all the tasking to 100%. So we have our consult call. They get a few things to do. They have 7 days to work out the payment plan, or to look at their finances, to, figure out how they can make it work. But I also say, I have a qualifier. I say, if you do not do tasking to 100%, I get to take that off the table, because I don't want to work with anybody who doesn't put in 100%.
Right.
And time again, I'll get, like, an email. Oh, I wrote the email, but I didn't send it. Okay, well, your commitment was to write and send the email. So if you don't write and send that email, then I will take the opportunity to work together, like, off the table, because that's my bare ass minimum of, like, how I will work with people. And I want to make sure that the people that I work with are fully able to show up 100%.
Right.
So know what it is. What are those 50 qualifications? And I'm big on list writing. Like, really get clear and give yourself full permission to write what it is that you want in that negotiation, what it is that you want from that sales conversation, what it is that you want from that salary raise conversation. What is it that you want to come out of that? And what is it that you need? Like, what is it that you need to come out of that? Like, beyond what you want. Like, what is it? Do you need, an extra 5,000? Do you really actually need that full 30? Like, is that, like, just non-negotiable? But you may do 28. Like, You like to cover your bases of where you want to go, of what you want to do. Look at what is it that you need, and then really ask yourself, what is the bare minimum that you're willing to settle for? Because when you can look at that bare minimum and you raise the floor instead of just settling like willy-nilly. And then what are those contingency plans? If you don't get what it is that you want, what do you need to have a deeper conversation of, is this the right fit for you? Do you need to pivot your career? Do you need to pivot into a different company that actually will see and value what you bring to the table? Do you need to pivot your sales strategy or your marketing if you're an entrepreneur? Like, are you not positioning yourself as, a $10,000 a month coach or $5,000 a month coach? If you're not positioning yourself in that way with your sales and marketing, you're not going to attract the quality leads that will allow for you to have that negotiation conversation at the price point for what you say is your price point. You're either going to get what you want or what you need.
Absolutely. So the example that you said, that if you're looking for maybe $30,000 in salary, but you're getting 28, and to your point of what you need, maybe you'll get 28, but then they'll give you another week's vacation. And maybe vacation is something that you really need, because maybe you're trying to, accommodate family, like with kids. Kids are always sick, or, they have activities or things like that. So it's not always just about the money and the salary, but there could be some other things that you can negotiate. And that's kind of what you were talking about, what you need. I picture it almost as a mind mapping or just brainstorming on, put everything that you could possibly think of down on paper. And like you said, it's helpful if you actually write it down, because you see it, you visualize it. And then from there, you can start figuring out, okay, what is it that I absolutely need? And then the want is almost kind of like an extra, like a nice to have.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at, if what you need is actually what you want, and if what you want is what you'll settle for, that's when you actually have congruence. Like, and commitment, because it takes a level of commitment and personal responsibility to say, what I want is, to have a multi-six-figure business. Well, opportunities will come along that will allow you to stay at a nice low six-figure or maybe five-figure business. If you say yes to those opportunities, then you're not actually committed to what it is that you say that you want. So just like entering into a relationship or a marriage, make sure that what it is that you want is actually really what it is that you want.
Right.
And then keep your commitments to yourself. Like, if that is a commitment, then go for that commitment, because as soon as you make that commitment and you make that goal, the universe will respond in a way that's going to say, do you really want it? Like, do you really want it? And you'll get these opportunities that'll come along. Maybe it'll be like, oh, well, we'll give you a $5,000 raise, or we'll just, so know what your boundaries are. This is like a negotiation conversation, especially on the part of somebody who wants something, is ultimately a boundaries conversation. Like, what are those boundaries of which you won't veer outside of those lines for? Because when you're clear on that, that's how you can get a straight trajectory to what it is that you want. If you're constantly going outside the boundaries and you're not staying in your lane of the line that you say that you want to be drawn for the vision of your future, to tie it back to the vision that you want to create. So if what you say you want is not actually what you want, and that's why it's incredibly key to be crystal clear. Do you want what you want, or are you wanting to want it?
Oh,
there's
gosh,
a massive difference.
That's key.
Because wanting to want a $30,000 raise is wonderful. Sure, would it be nice to take your family on extra vacation? Would it be nice to have some extra massages during the week or something like that? Whatever it is that you want to put that money toward. But understand beyond that, are you just wanting to want that? Or is that truly something that you're like, this is non-negotiable? These wants are non-negotiable. Because the boundary lines of what is non-negotiable for you is key. Like for me, my boundary line with my husband was non-negotiable: kids.
Right.
I want kids. And that boundary line allowed us to have the candid conversation. It took heaps of courage because I already was falling in love with the man, and yet I was willing to walk away.
Yes.
And that is so essential. It's the energy of I want you, but I don't need you.
Right.
Because I can have what I want. What I really want is going to show up for me.
Interesting. Now, you said something earlier about if a client doesn't do everything that you ask them to do, then you reserve the right not to work with them. I think the way I equate that in the corporate world is I used to manage people, and people would come into my office and say, well, I want a promotion or I want a raise or whatever. And when we would come up with ideas of like, okay, these are some things that you can work on, these are some projects that you can do. And then more often than not, nothing would come to fruition. So as you know, from a negotiating perspective, from a management perspective, you can guide your employees. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So same with you and your clients. So you do have to want what you're asking for, especially if you like go and have the conversation, then you don't follow through, then that's kind of like you saying you don't deserve it or you're not worthy or whatever, because you're not following through. You're not putting in the work. So I think it's really important for women to understand that when you're trying to get a promotion or a salary or a new job, you have to take the time to invest in yourself and put the work in, because otherwise, like you said, the universe is going to respond and it's going to give you what you want.
It's going to give you exactly what you're declaring. And it's by your actions that it knows what you want. So if you go into a conversation for negotiation and for a higher salary, and your manager comes back and says, okay, in order to do that, we need to see this, this, and this improve in your performance, and you don't do that, then you literally are making an actionable declaration to the universe that what you want is not really what you want. You just, it's kind of like dealing with a child. It's like, you're kind of, just having that like, well, I want it because that's our little ego speaking, rather than, somebody who's a mature adult, to go back to that personal responsibility that says, I want this, and I am personally responsible enough to take on the additional responsibility that's going to be required of me. Because with great power, with great money, with great influence comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, there might be some women that are listening to us, and I know we talked about women get stuck with, in their own heads with a story. And sometimes they may not know how to do. Now, this is where coaching comes in. So this is fantastic that we're having a conversation. But if they're stuck in their heads, what do you recommend for them to do as the next best step?
So Rosie, you just said something great. And it's literally just what you said. They may not know how. And that's the key, is that it's not how, it's who. Who can you ask to support you?
Yeah.
Who needs to step up in your realm, in your kingdom or queendom, in order for you to take on more responsibility? Who is already doing what it is that you want to be doing? Are you getting mentorship? Are you getting guidance from them? Who is already operating at a level of greater fulfillment or has greater joy? Tap into the who and you will find the how. But if you approach it like all my clients know, I do not ever in any session with my clients take the excuse, I don't know how. I'm like, of course you don't know how, because if you knew how, you would be doing it.
Right.
It's not the how, it's the who. So who is already doing what it is? How do they think about what the problems that they're facing? How do they think about how they show up in the world? How do they think about their job? How do they think about managing people and that next level of personal responsibility? When you start asking the question, and who do I know to get that's doing what it is that I want to be doing? If they're doing, being a great parent and being a great career woman, talk to those women who are doing it successfully. Have conversations. And so many women don't do that because they're scared of like, oh, well, they're so, influential or they have such a big following or they're probably so busy. You will be surprised. So many people are far more willing to give and to serve and to share if you just have the audacity and the courage to just ask.
Yes.
I mean,
And that, no,
I was just going to share one of my favorite quotes is from Oprah. And she says, in life, you get what you have the courage to ask for. So ask the who's of the world that are doing what it is that you want to be doing.
and I was just going to say that goes back to those courageous conversations because you have to have courage to ask. So, absolutely. Now, I know that you've done a lot in your career. You've been a TEDx speaker. You obviously have I looked at your website. You have a gorgeous website, but
Thank
you
you.
have been a certified Pilates instructor. You've been a WeGo health activist. You've worked with Netflix and the CW and ESPN. How do you get all this energy? So what I really want to ask you is from all of the things that you've done, you are now a high performance coach. So tell me a little bit about your story and how you actually got to be a high performance coach, because again, you've done a lot.
Yeah, so my journey, I've always been in the business of transforming people's stories.
Mm.
So when I first started my career, simultaneously writing screenplays and writing and becoming a Pilates instructor because in Hollywood you need a bridge job. And so I started teaching Pilates, which was something so foreign for me. If you had told me when I was 16 years old that I'd be teaching fitness and like loving body mechanics, I would have thought you were crazy. Because back then I was bulimic. I was struggling with so many identity issues. I had massive imposter syndrome, but I found this process that allowed me to support myself financially, set my own schedule, and gave me a process of physical fitness and made me for the first time in my life feel good. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that led me to I need to lead with service and help more women feel this way. And so as I started my career in teaching Pilates, I got opportunities to write a screenplay that came out. It's called Bro, and and most of my clients, when they see the trailer, they're like, I can't believe you wrote this. They see me like personal development, and the movie is very different. But that movie did save two kids' lives.
Okay.
And because stories transform people's lives.
Yeah.
We are transformed by stories, whether that is what we watch on TV, what we see in a movie, or the stories that we tell ourselves.
Mm.
And as I was teaching hour after hour after hour, I taught for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and 6 on Saturdays. And within a year, I learned leadership. I learned authenticity. I led with with truth of like, I don't have all the answers. I was bulimic, like, but I found a process that really worked for me. And within 2 years, I had completely healed from bulimia with no psychological or medical intervention. I had transformed hundreds of lives through Pilates and being able to get women in touch with their bodies. And from that, I saw that it was never about whether somebody was technically fat or technically thin. It was never about whether they exercised once a week or 5 times a week. It was always about how they thought, the stories that they were telling themselves about what their body was capable of, what their body could do, and the vision that they had for their body in the future, and where was the gap between where they were now and where they wanted to be. And so, and the strategies to get there. And so after my film, which came out, which was like this dream, it came out, it was distributed by Lionsgate, put out on Netflix. I thought like I was going to have like, this was it. And I got to the premiere and I was like, I'm only 90% fulfilled. And I kept chasing that extra 10% of fulfillment of like, well, what is it that I still was only 90, like Pilates was always meant to be a bridge job. So even when I started my own private studio, it was kind of like a bridge business because I just wanted to have make more money, have my own space, do my own thing. I had like a great amount of clients on retainer. So it was always never meant to be the main thing. But I was always searching for like what that main thing. And when the thing that I thought was going to be my main thing wasn't my main thing, that was when I started seeking out like, okay, well, what is it? So then I got involved with an e-commerce company, brought a fitness product to market, was able to get it featured in like the big billboards in Times Square, got pitched into the first round of Shark Tank auditions, learned heaps about business and about building the subconscious structure of a business, which we didn't do because I got in with a partner. And my partner and I made decisions on a very different way. I'm much more of a quick start on the Colby Index. Like I am a
Yes.
9. I just go and I make my mistakes and I learn along the way. My partner made decisions very differently, and we ran into heaps of friction because of that. And he liked having the title of CEO, but he wasn't out there making the sales. And so that was where there was some friction. We ended up parting ways 2 years in, and I went through a buyout process that for me was very traumatizing because, and this was just my experience of it. Probably in the history of buyouts, this wasn't like the worst thing possible, but I'd never dealt with lawyers, and I was 28 at the time, dealing with lawyers, and they don't always send you the nicest emails, and
Right.
scaring, I had so much fear, and it hit all of my childhood trauma responses of things being taken away from me and rejection and everything that I had thought I had solved. So I'd figured out my body, I'd figured out relationships. I never had fear in my career. I never ever, I was always the one to make those audacious asks, always the one to lean in with courage. My friends, when I was screenwriting, they're like, wait, you just go up to production houses and like drop off a script? I'm like, yep. And I just would go to, I would meet people. I was never had fear when it came to my career or what I wanted to do with Pilates. I was like, okay, I like Pilates. I'm going to start my own studio. People were like, oh my, you're just going to start a business? Yeah. Like it was literally, I had the Elle Woods, like, what, this is hard? Like sort of mentality until I went through that buyout process. And then after those 3 months, we signed the buyout agreement. I literally 3 weeks before I got married to my husband. We jetted off for our honeymoon for 6 weeks in Italy. And I was like, what do I do when I get back? I had no idea. And so we started brainstorming ideas. And after way too many espressos, I leaped off the couch and I said, crown yourself. And my husband's like, what's that? I said, I don't know. It's the name of my company, but it combines entrepreneurship and health and holistic fulfillment and success. And it's for women to be able to empower them that they can have it all and they can truly have an amazing relationship, an amazing body, and a thriving, amazing business. Awesome. Great idea. Bought the domain, bought all the lights, bought the production equipment. Didn't make a sale for a year and a half because I was so beleaguered with doubt, comparisоnism, blame, and shame. And because of that, I wasn't living into the values that I was preaching. Crown Yourself was about ownership. I wasn't taking ownership for my own financial state. I was deep in debt. And it was from that space that I realized when I found out I was pregnant that the person I had become in that year and a half of trying to start a business, of, putting myself out there on social media, but kind of sort of not really. Like I never made an offer. I never put myself out there in a way that would create rejection. I just posted nice, sweet, kind quotes, like, which is great if you want to be vanilla, but it doesn't get you clients.
Right.
And so it was when I found out that I was pregnant with my son, I took a very hard look at myself and I said, the person that I am today is not the person that I want to be the mother of my son. I wasn't taking ownership. I wasn't being personally responsible. I was blaming, shaming, and complaining all day long, every day. I was very negative. And I looked at that and I said, I got to change. I know I can change because this is a mindset piece and it's a performance piece. And I took a very deep assessment of all my beliefs that I had. And some were some deep, subconscious, sad, self-limiting beliefs. And I took an assessment of all of the habits that I had, and I wasn't setting myself up for success with my energy. I wasn't managing my thoughts and what I was saying. I was complaining a lot, which drains your energy. And then I said, I need a process. And that's when I found neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnosis. I immediately slapped down $5,000 to get certified and on a credit card, even though I was in debt, knowing that I would be able to that was going to help me transform because I had a 9-month deadline. And immediately after getting certified, I got my first clients. I then started growing the business. I left my Pilates business teaching, and I was able to grow from there. And it's been a super fun ride that took us all the way to Australia to live in Australia for the past 2 years during the pandemic, which was always our dream, was to have a fully remote business where we could work from wherever and provide our kids with a really epic, amazing lifestyle. And that's what we're doing today. And I'm actually living into my values of actually leading the values of which and being that instead of just teaching that. There's a big difference.
That is a big difference. Now, I think the one main takeaway that I got from your story is that you ultimately realized that you weren't living into who you wanted to be, and you were able to use two things: mindset and habits. And I think with anything, mindset and habits are the main thing that you have to focus on. And I know of NLP. I haven't done it myself, but I know a lot of people that have, and it is transformative. I hope to do it at some point, someday. But NLP kind of combines your mindset, your habits, the language, all that information to actually be how you want to be, or I should say, step into who you want to become, I guess is a good way to say it too. So, how long have you been doing neuro-linguistic programming?
6 years, and I just received my master's certification in that as well.
Oh.
And I think the thing about NLP is it provides you, like, when you coach from an NLP perspective, the coach is listening for the context, not the color of the story. So typically when we listen in a conversation with a chat with our girlfriends, we're listening to the content. Oh, your boss did this, like, oh my gosh. But instead, as an NLP coach, we're listening to, like, what are the linguistic cues of how this person is contextualizing and framing their experience. Because when you can break that frame, the ink of the glorious experience, some of it, the ink that doesn't work gets to flow out to a different picture.
Mhm.
And get to keep that frame, you get to reframe what is actually working. And when you can reframe perspective has power. If you see your boss in a negative light and you think that they're just a horrible human being and they are always trying to keep you down, well, that's your experience that you're going to contextualize and repeat continuously day after day going into work. But if you can see that your boss is actually challenging you because she wants you to be better, because she actually wants you to get the raise, and that's why she's been so hard on you. She just maybe hasn't framed it the right way, but she's been so hard on you because she actually wants you to succeed. Well, that's a completely different energy. And the perspective shift of how you show up for the job in those two contexts is transformative.
Yes, perspective is transformative. It's so nuts because, sometimes my husband and I will be having a conversation and I'll say, why, I'll be mad about something he said. And he goes, that's not what I said at all. He goes, you just made that whole thing up in your head. And then when he tells me again what he said, I'm like, oh yeah, I took it the wrong way. It's my perspective. People say my perspective, my reality, but that's not necessarily the truth. It's just
not actually the reality, but it is your reality.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, so Kimberly, you have given us so much amazing methods of changing your behavior, your mindset. Now, one other thing that I want to pick your brain on are actually a couple things. So at the end of our conversation, I'm going to ask you for your 2 tips. So that's one thing. But in the meantime, the other thing that I want to leave our listeners with are some powerful phrases or some maybe words that you constantly tell your clients that, if you use these words, it's going to be more powerful. Because I think a lot of times we tell, women, you need to be able to articulate your worth, but we don't really give them the language. So do you have a couple of like power phrases that you use with your clients?
Yeah, first it's candor is kind.
Okay.
So how do I need to be more candid with myself and with those that I love? and with those that I'm in relationship with, because not always do we love our boss, but we are in a relationship with our boss. And so what is it? And so the candor is kind. How can I be more candid? And one of the statements that I love is from Tony Robbins, and he says, your life will be dictated by the quality of the questions. If you don't like your life, you're probably asking, the wrong questions. But what are the wrong questions? No one teaches us that. But I'm going to teach you that right now, because the question of why is very regularly used. It's used a lot in therapy, and it's used a lot when we experience anything good. Like, I mean, Simon Sinek, start with why. Like, why? What's your why? What's your purpose? Why is a great question, but only when it's focused in the direction of faith and purpose and vision. Why is a sucky question when it's faced in the direction of your own self-doubt. Because what why does subconsciously for us is it's going to allow our subconscious mind to go on this journey of literally finding every single reason as to why that.
Right.
So why did I receive this raise? Well, if you're filtering that question through a filter of shame and of guilt and of like negative emotions, you're going to come up with some pretty crappy reasons, and it's going to not make you feel so great. But if you focus it toward vision, why did I get this raise? And it's focused toward like, oh my gosh, joy and excitement, and it's filtered through those emotions, you're going to get some different answers. It just depends on the emotional context and the context in which of the direction. Are you facing it toward faith and vision, or are you facing it toward fear and self-doubt? But a better question to ask is what or how, because what or how will give you the strategies. And so I always tell my clients, think of your life from, imagine like zooming out and seeing you in your body experiencing the situation, and take that omniscient perspective like an anthropologist. If you are studying you, like instead of it being a personal identification with like, oh, this behavior is me, why do I always get this wrong? It turns into, that's interesting. I see Kimberly's in this negotiation situation, and every time she's asked this question or faces rejection, she gets hit with a massive amount of self-doubt. That's interesting, because when you take that omniscient perspective, no longer are you identifying with the behavior that you currently are exhibiting. So how can you be the anthropologist for your life and deep studier? I think the greatest study and journey that you can ever go on is the study of your own self-awareness of how you're responding in every relationship, in every situation. And like Rosie, like what you said with your conversation with your husband, I mean, imagine taking that omniscient perspective and saying, what Rosie's response in that question was really, experiencing it through this emotion. I wonder what's really coming from that emotion, or like looking at it from a different perspective. So it allows it automatically, that omniscient anthropological perspective allows you to see things from a different perspective. So look at your life from the space of being an anthropologist. Look at your behavior as not you. You are not your behavior. You're so much more than that. You're so much more than this human form. Like, you are so much more powerful. And when you look at the context of your behavior, of your physiology, your attitude, your words, your language, how are you experiencing life? And when you can look at it from that anthropological perspective of like, when Kimberly faces rejection, she immediately goes into the story of how, bad she is at sales. And is that ultimately true? No, she closed, this $15,000 sale over here, or this $50,000 sale over here. No, it's not ultimately true. So we can stop the story before it starts, but the key is self-awareness. You cannot change anything that you are not self-aware of. So that which, and this is the other phrase that I commonly tell my clients, that which is conscious manifests happily. That which is unconscious manifests unhappily. So if it's deeply unconscious and you're noticing it in your environment, you're like, oh, there's this toxic boss, or, oh, I keep getting these really crappy dates, or, oh, I keep on attracting these clients that never have the money to pay me. Well, what story are you telling yourself unconsciously?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And that kind of goes back to, again, believing the story that you're constantly saying. So that's exactly what you're talking about right there, as far as like, be aware of the movie that's constantly playing in your head and question it. Is it true? Is it actually, what the reality is? So, oh my gosh, that was very key, because a lot of times people are stuck in there. Well, I'm never going to get the promotion. I'm never going to get the raise. I'm always going to be stuck in this sucky job, or I'm never going to lose those last 10 pounds, whatever the scenario is. But, I think what we're saying is that you can change that with awareness and with habits and with mindset. So I think that's pretty powerful. Well, Kimberly, I know you're at Legoland with your family, and we've already taken a lot of your time, but if you could leave us with a couple of final tips that you could give to women in the corporate world to advance in their careers, what would those be?
So, Rosie, I want to say first, your example of what you just said is going to be part of my tip of I'm never going to get the raise. Always people are getting promoted. Everyone else gets promoted but me. Listen for language that is in absolutes and run as far and as fast away from that as possible, because those absolutes of I'm never, always, everyone else, those are boxing you into a paradigm and a reality that feels real, but may not really be real. Like, really, everyone else is getting a raise. I mean, have you asked the secretary, the assistant, the janitor, did he get a raise? Like, probably not. So that is our inner child coming out to play. And I hear it all the time from my 5-year-old. I'm never gonna get. I'm like, oh, okay. That's the inner child just needing a little nurturing. So whenever you hear yourself speaking in absolutes, if it's always going to be this way. Everyone else can do it so easily except for me. Give yourself the space, grace, and time to just nurture that part of you that just needs to be seen and validated. Give her some words, give her some time, just really allow yourself to honestly be there and sit there. I do a visualization exercise of just allowing myself to bring forth that inner child who just needs to be seen. She needs to be recognized. She needs to be heard. And, asking her, what is it that you need from me? And being that gentle, loving parent that sometimes we didn't all have. And really gently, kindly, compassionately parenting her, because that's who's coming to the table when we're speaking in absolutes. That's one piece. The second piece is listen to the language of how you're framing your life. If you're constantly, especially if you are in a romantic relationship, or you have a good girlfriend or a friend to reflect back to you, like, hey, you've been complaining about your boss for a few weeks now. Like in my house, we have the 3 complaint rule. Like you can complain 3 times. And then after 3, you either better do something about it and we'll figure something out, or, we stop complaining and you just accept it. So if you have somebody that you can have, that it could be a coach, it could be a partner, it can be somebody that you trust, a friend who you are open and have a trusting relationship to say, hey, I've noticed in the past 3 sessions, you've been complaining a lot, or you've been, your language around your boss or your language around your colleague has been very negative. Like, what could we do instead? How can we change this situation? Do we need to do something about this? Because this is a constant reoccurring theme. That which is conscious manifests happily, that which is unconscious manifests unhappily. So in relationships, how do we need to change our perspective on the relationship that you're in with this person? And when you can change your perspective on that relationship, because we're in a relationship with everything, whether it's money or our businesses or our career or our boss or our colleagues, we're in a relationship constantly with this universe that we're in. And because of that, when we can look at what is the relationship that we are struggling with, that's where the gold is in your own personal shifts and change and perspective. And so having somebody to reflect back that language who can keep in accounting. I love coaches. I love masterminds. But it can be a trusted partner. My husband is great at this. It's hey, you've been complaining about this a couple times. Like, let's look at what we need to do on this. And that will give you some guidance and some perspective because, like we said, Rosie, perspective is your power. Like, that's when you can change your perspective in a relationship. You literally, that is the magic. You actually change the dynamics of the relationship.
Oh my gosh. I love the three time complaint rule. Like that's it. 3 times you're down. You either do something about it or you accept it and you quit complaining. Because you know what? The other thing too is that comes to mind is when I hear people complain, it's kind of like toxic to me because it's just like, oh my gosh, there's that negativity again. And I don't have any control over someone else complaining. So it's like, yeah, okay, so your example of, I've heard you say this 3 times. Can we like talk about it? Like, let's debrief on it. Like, what can you do? What are some things that you can impact that behavior? I think that is so wise and so insightful. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Everything we talked about, I think, is so fitting for women in the corporate world or entrepreneurs. And we also talked about just some life situations. That is all such good methods on changing your mindset and your behavior. And I hope that anybody that's listening out there, the biggest thing is just take action, because without taking action, then you're just stuck in the same spot. So again, Kimberly, thank you so much. Any final words?
Just have the courage to own what it is that you want.
Wonderful.
And really what you want, not what you want, but what you want now for this next evolution of where you're going in your career or in your business. Own what it is that you want and then be personally responsible and committed to only settling for what it is that you want.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, and have a great rest of your day at Legoland.
Thank you so much, Rosie. It's been a pleasure.
I had such a great time talking to Kimberly. And one of the things that stood out to me is that she stopped using the word leader and now is using the word visionary because women see themselves more as visionaries. Another thing that I thought was pretty incredible is the study that she talked about where men are billing hours while they're in the shower and on the toilet, whereas women don't do that. So that's just another difference in how men and women do things and how women need to be a little bit more aggressive and confident. And we also talked about the fact that awareness is the first step to changing your habits and to changing your mindset. Without awareness, you're not going to be able to change your habits and your mindset. So I'm going to leave you with Kimberly's 2 tips. Tip number 1, she says, listen for language that is absolute and run away from that type of language as far as you can. Examples are everyone, always, I'm never going to. Those are all examples of absolute language. She says, when you hear yourself speaking in that absolute language, give yourself the space, grace, and time to nurture that part of you that needs to be seen and validated. I think that is so insightful. Tip number 2 is listen to the language of how you are framing your life. She talked about the 3-time complaint rule in her household. If you're complaining about something more than 3 times, then you either have to change it or accept it and stop complaining. And one of the things is if you're complaining about something constantly and someone hears you complain about it, maybe they can say, hey, I've noticed that you've complained about X, Y, or Z. What can we do about it? How can you change that? So those are 2 fantastic tips. You can reach out to Kimberly. All of her contact information is going to be on the episode blog. So you can go onto the episode blog on the No Woman Left Behind podcast show, and all of her contact information will be right there. So, and again, as a reminder, if you want to have a conversation with me, please go on my website, go into the contact page and shoot me an email, and we can certainly schedule a call for us. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.